Hello everyone, please let me know if you can actually hear me. I'm tired of starting streams and going through the whole spiel with no one being able to hear me. And also, can you hear
Okay.
Unwithered?
Hello, can you hear me?
They can hear me, they can hear me. Okay. So, let's begin. Hello everyone, welcome to A Brief Calm Discussion. My name is GiBi. This is the show that is not a debate, that is not an argument, that's not even really an interview. It is a discussion. And that kind of thing should be as simple as ABCD. Today I have my guest, The Unwithered Truth, and we're going to be talking about Midnight Motorist. So you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce Midnight Motorist.
Sure. Hello, everybody. I'm the Unwithered Truth. I'm a fellow FNAF theorist, if anyone doesn't know me. And yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about the most confusing minigame in all of Five Nights at Freddy's. Except for maybe Save Them. Maybe.
Say, yeah, no, because we have spent probably dozens of hours talking about Save Them, where it seems to
Hmm.
show that what it's depicting is simple, but then what it means is not.
Yes. Yeah.
I would call Midnight Motorist the biggest mystery in the entire franchise. Like, I'd put maybe
Ooh.
the contents of the box and who did the bite of 87 are maybe the big three, but I don't think those two have answers to them. Whereas I think if you stare at Midnight
Right.
Motorist long enough, you'll figure it out.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah. It's sort of like an anti-Save Them, right? Like the actual contents of the minigame are extremely confusing, but maybe the implications are pretty simple, like under certain interpretations.
Yeah. So I'm going to go through what every single person in every Midnight Motorist video goes through, which is what actually happens in the minigame. So,
Skip. I'm skipping 5 seconds
and
ahead. Okay.
then right afterwards, you got to do the ad read. Yeah. So
Yeah.
this is a mini game in Pizza Sim. That's the game where Henry sets up a fake restaurant. Michael goes and works for it. It's a big trap to get all the animatronics together and burn them down. There's multiple endings to the game. One of them is called the lore ending. That's the ending where you see at the gravestones in the graveyard on the hill that have the MCI victims' names on them. To get that ending, you need to do 3 mini games throughout the course of playing the game. There's Security Puppet, which is a retelling of Charlie's death from FNAF 2. We know this for a fact because it pops up when Henry's doing his speech at the end. There's Fruity Maze, which is certainly the abduction of Susie because it matches 1-to-1 with what happens in the Silver Eyes novels. And it's a blonde girl with a red bow, and her dog gets hit, and then William comes up and gets her.
Yeah.
It's the most straightforward thing it could possibly be.
Yes.
And then the third game, the third game
uh,
is Midnight Motorist, which begins with a sort of arcade style. You're driving a car on the wrong side of the road, and so you have to dodge the other cars and build up speed to get a high score. But if you glitch out of the side of the map, then you appear in a second minigame. In the files, this is labeled separately from Midnight Motorist. It is labeled Later That Night. You're playing in a purple car. You're driving through the woods on a rainy night. You can pass a little clearing, and in that clearing is a strangely shaped segment of differently colored ground. And in that strangely shaped segment of differently colored ground is another small, differently shaped segment of different ground. You can walk past this clearing and go to a location called Juniors. It's a building with giant letters that say JRS. So maybe it's not Juniors, maybe it's, I don't know, JRS. And there's other cars in the parking lot. If you get out of your car, you'll see that you're an orange fellow. Outside of Juniors is a green guy. If you walk up to him, he'll say something to the effect of, "You know you can't be here." You can then continue down the road to a house, a lone house in the woods. You can get out of your car and go inside. There was someone inside sitting on a soft chair watching television who says something to the effect of, "He's had a hard day, please be nice to him." You can then walk up a hallway to a door. You can attempt to get in the door. A knocking sound plays. The door doesn't open. You yell at your son to let you in. He doesn't. You walk away. Then you say, "This is my house. I'll do it." And you go over and you knock on the door again. And you say, "Maybe I'll find a way in from outside." You go outside. You go to the back of the house. The window is smashed. There are what look to be footprints on the ground. There are near a bush what look to be 2 animatronic footprints, feet with 3 toes, and the footprints go off screen. You then walk off screen and you say something to the effect of, he's gone to that place again, he will be sorry when he gets back. And then the mini game ends. Did I miss anything?
Did you mention the mound?
Yeah, so I always like pointing out that in the clearing is this weird box shape with a little outgrowth that a lot of people think looks like the foundation of a house. And then
Yes.
within that differently colored segment is the mound, which is a differently colored
Yes.
patch of pixels.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a lot of details. It's a lot of very specific, but also very vague details. The game itself is, like all the 8-bit mini games, incredibly symbolicisms. But unlike the other games, it's telling a significantly more complex story. So that really gets in the
Mm.
way of a lot of people's, understandings or theories about it. Because it's so minimal, but there's also so much to it.
Yeah.
So whenever people theorize about it, there's always a couple questions that everyone needs answers to. Who is Orange Guy? What is the mound? What is Juniors? Who's the green person? Who's the person on the couch? Who's the runaway? Who are the animatronic footprints? Where's the runaway going to? When does this take place? Like what year?
Yeah.
So those are every question that you're going to answer in this brief, calm discussion.
Very simple thing to do, a simple task. Um, I actually there's a detail I've just noticed for the first time. While you were talking, I have the video of Midnight Motorist up on my other monitor, and I just noticed something which is really interesting. And I'm curious to hear your response to it. In the actual Midnight Motorist part, right? Like before later that night
Mhm.
on the road, we are playing as an identical version of a car to all the other cars that are on the road, right?
Yes.
But something I just noticed is that the car we are driving is a slightly lighter shade of purple. It's almost pink, while all the other cars are a more deep purple. And if you remember, in the original Save Him minigame, which is obviously the one retold in this as Security Puppet, where we see the purple guy drive up outside the house or outside of Freddy's, um, it was a pink guy sprite, as it used to be called when people thought maybe there were two purple guys. Um, and I just find it interesting that the sprite color of the actual car that we're playing as is that lighter shade of pink compared to the deeper purple of the other cars. Um, Potentially a callback to Pink Guy. Because that was the only time we've ever seen Afton, that and Foxy Go 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 represented with the kind of lighter pink shade rather than the more traditional deep purple that we see in Save Them and from then on.
Yeah, and people in chat are saying this like we know that the cars are different colors, so you know which one is you. We're saying
Sure, yeah, no, of
yeah,
course.
yeah. Why wouldn't Scott make, William's car the deep purple and every other car literally anything else? Why would he make it pink?
Mhm.
Um yeah,
Exactly. It's like it's obviously you're highlighted, you look like you stand out, but the thing I'm just finding interesting is the contrast that then creates between the purple and the pink.
yes, because I'm sure what you're going to want to do is link this to Charlie's death in which he was pink.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, it does. It is an interesting thing to consider. Do you take anything from Five Laps into consideration when it comes to Midnight Motorist?
I take it as much as I take like the books, and even then it's kind of dicey. I mean, I don't think you need anything from Five Laps to. I know you'll heavily disagree, but I don't think you need a single thing from Five Laps to understand or reach the conclusions about Midnight Motorist that are presented in that game, other than maybe the 87 dice, which I find very interesting for a couple of reasons, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. But I don't look at Five Laps as the oh my god, it's super confirmed, because it's a demo. We don't even know if the game's coming out or when it's coming out, and it's sort of in that nebulous area. Like that was the game that used the book version of
Hmm.
the Mr. Hugs vacuum instead of the Cleanovac. So there's obviously some breakdown and communication going on. Now, do I think Scott would have put the game out on the 10th anniversary with a Springtrap bobblehead on the Midnight Motorist car? Probably not. But that's a whole it's just a gray area, as everything is with FNAF when it comes to canonicity. So I look at it and I go, is it likely that Scott would do that? No. Is it impossible to say that it's just a case of miscommunication because he was writing the movie and working on Secret of the Mimic and whatever? Also no. So it's wavy, but I don't think you need that game to prove, you know, William Orange Guy. But we'll get to it.
Yeah, even without Willem Orange Guy, because one of my frustrations, and I'm not going to talk about my theory like at all, other than potentially for a context like this. A lot of
I'm sure I'll
people,
ask you
yeah,
questions about it.
a lot of people, used 5 laps to say, oh well, definitively Orange Guy is William, and then they would go and say that the mound is where the box is buried, or the mound is Cece's grave. But like the mound in 5 laps is bigger than your car. It looks like this giant dirt pile you'd see at a construction site or something. And
Yeah.
Junior's is definitely not a Freddy's location in 5 laps. So
Yes.
and the dice say 83 and 87 depending on like what side they are, which is
Yes.
wrong for dice. So I guess my question is like, not to spoil what you think the mound is, but like if what you think the mound is something small, do you just look past 5 laps and say, I don't care that the mound is 10 feet tall, that's just 5 laps?
Five. Yeah, I wouldn't use scale as an indicator of anything in 5 laps. In Midnight Motorist itself, in later that night, the mound is bigger than the yellow guy sprite, like the small yellow guy sprite,
Yes.
or it's about the same. If you turned him on his side, it would be, about the same size as he is. So I think regardless, it is large, but also in 5 laps, the car you're driving is like a go-kart, tiny cartoony version. So I don't necessarily think, especially if it's not a part of the map you're supposed to go to, right? It's supposed to be seen from a distance, like through the trees. I could see them making the man bigger to be seen from that distance, and it's a cartoony art style. So I don't take scale into consideration when it comes to 5 laps. But again, I don't necessarily think 5 laps is the be all and end all. Like, just say that was a decision they'd made, and then in a year's time, if 5 laps comes out, then we'll suddenly go, oh, they made the man smaller. That must mean that it was intentional change because Scott thought it was too big and it was going to mislead people or whatever. It's all hypotheticals when it comes to FNAF.
Yeah, which is why I'm at the very least right now just like choosing to ignore it. I'm like, listen, when it comes out, I'll deal with it. Until then, I'm just gonna pretend I didn't see it.
Yep.
All right, so you kind of already said it, but who is Orange Guy?
It's William Afton.
Bum bum
Orange
bum.
guy is William Afton.
Driving in his purple car.
Exactly.
Yes.
Um, I have a few reasons to think this. The main one being the purple car, and basically the reason I think that this car is not just a purple car that's sort of supposed to mislead us is it specifically has a very important detail shown to us in the save him minigame, the puppet death minigame from FNAF 2, which is that the car wheels on have fender skirts, which are like those kind of bubble things that wrap over the top of the wheels. And no other car, any of the cars parked in Juniors, don't have this detail. They all have gray wheels, which shows that they're exposed to the air, above them. And the purple car is the only one that has these on them, and it's a specific detail taken from FNAF 2, where both sets of wheels, even though that's kind of doesn't make sense in real life for both wheels to have fender skirts unless it's like the most specific car in the world that has like wheels that don't need to turn outside of the body of the car. It's a detail taken from FNAF 2, which I think is then imported into here. And I don't see if the idea was just like, oh, purple car, maybe we're William. And then it turns out, oh no, we're not William. I don't know why you'd make it so that this is definitely Williams' car. Like it's 100% is the same car. It's meant to make you think it's the same car. I know you'll probably just say, yeah, it's to make you think it's William's car. But I think the other thing is I don't particularly see motivation for the way this game is presented. Why we have to do this like William, rug pull. Oh, it's raining and you're driving a purple car. What is this? Oh, it's actually got nothing to do with the other game that has a car and it's raining. I don't see why Scott would line things up that way, especially given how simply the other two are presented and how straightforward they are. I have a feeling Scott thought he was being somewhat straightforward with this game, and
Yes.
it fell through the cracks of other miscommunications and misinterpretations.
That's kind of why I find Midnight Motorist so interesting, because everything in every single game, especially in the first seven, it seems like we solved, or at the very least came to a satisfying conclusion, even if it's wrong. Besides maybe save
Yes.
them. And so I can see, kind of like the logbook, where Scott held his tongue for 7 years, where people said the solution was Evan before someone got Dave. He's clearly capable of holding his tongue for that long if people are just totally misunderstanding something.
Yeah.
But it still sort of reflects, as obvious as I believe the answer to be, it still reflects
Mhm.
on the puzzle itself that no one can agree on it this many years later. The
Yeah.
vast majority opinion is that Orange Guy is William, but I think everything
Yes.
else there's no agreement on. You can find every single combination of what the mound is, who the runaway is, where they're going, what year it is, what juniors is, and there's
Yeah, and
no
I
thing. There's no one agreement on
yeah,
all of them. Yeah.
yeah, and I was saying to you yesterday, like I go back and forth so often on this game, as everyone I think does. So I'm sure I will be representing a handful of different takes and ideas about Midnight Motorist. But I have a few that I'm pretty set on. One of them being William, being the orange guy. Um, I think partially there's the issue of why is he orange, and the most satisfying explanation I've heard is sister location ends the DLC ends with Michael doing the entered inside of him dog cutscenes, and he walks down the road and he slowly decomposes and he turns purple and his eyes light up white, and everybody went, "Oh my God, Michael was purple guy the whole time." And then Scott went, "No, no, 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 no. Sorry, I'm not. Michael is not purple guy. That was a miscommunication. I was trying to do a thing, but it didn't work. It's not. He's not purple guy, right? The killer is William, who is Springtrap. Michael." I think he was going for like a thematic thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, oh, he's turning into his father, and he looks like his dad before he gets decomposed, and then he looks like him after he dies. But that just confused everybody. So I think Scott, with that in mind, was like, okay, next game, I'm trying to show William, I want to do this mini game. What do I do? Well, honestly, William's been portrayed as purple, right, in his first couple of appearances, but his main color that more so lines up with his actions and his relationship to the history of Fazbear is yellow because he was Spring Bonnie and he used the Spring Bonnie suit to kill the kids. So that's a color which can represent William just as well as purple can, and it's not going to confuse people because people thought Michael was purple, and now they're going to be like, "Oh, is this Michael or is this William?" So I'm going to make him yellow and just like set it straight that from now on we're going to use yellow for William, and then that just confused people more. Um, that's how I think he went about it. Is he went, "What's the other color I can use so that I don't have this cross contamination with purple now being associated with Michael? Oh, I'll use the other color that he's most commonly associated with, and I'll put him in the purple car. So that's still like his outward color, but like if this was red guy or green
Green.
guy
Yeah.
or any other color guy, blue guy, I would have I would then be like, I don't know. But the fact that he's yellow is to me a good color choice on Scott's part, because other than the iconography of, oh, purple guy, really the color, if Scott were rebooting it, I think yellow is the more logical color to choose as his main color. But it's too late, right? Like he's already gone down that road. Purple is the color that associates most with William, which is why people got confused with Michael.
Yes. You know, and we've talked about colors and symbolism and things like that. Where, I actually talk about this in my next book video. Where no, my last book video, whatever. You know, when you see purple, you should think Afton, but there will be instances of purple that are not Afton. Like it's just bound to happen
Yes.
because that's how things work. You know, one of the animatronics having
Yeah.
purple eyes doesn't mean, oh, that one's William. You can ask yourself, is
Yes.
it? But that doesn't mean it is. And yes, as someone on the other side of the fence, I definitely see, you know, the same way that the biggest question for you is why is he orange? The biggest question for me is why is it William's car? I do think that
Yes.
there are satisfactory answers, but I totally admit that the reason that most people think that it is William is because it is so in our face that it's the purple car, and it's the first thing we see in the minigame. You know,
Yeah.
if Scott's telling
The
a
whole car, the
story,
whole minigame, like, is based around the car.
yeah,
The whole thing is inspired by the car's existence.
yes, yeah, if he's telling a story, it would be like, okay, chapter one, William's purple car was driving down the road, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. To have it be, you know, something else is definitely a difficult thing to counter against. So when do you think it takes place? Both after, because I'm sure you're going to say Charlie. So like after what event, and then also what year is that?
So after Charlie's death, um, and I think there is solid arguments specifically relating to Midnight Motorist for that being 1987, but I don't think Charlie died in 1987 for other reasons. So I think 1983 makes the most sense, given you know other things in the timeline, given when she dies, where she dies. 1987 is interesting, given obviously 5 lap stuff. The song that plays when you're playing Midnight Motorist is 187 BPM. So 87 is in the title. Why would that be the case? Is that important? I don't know. And then there's been some more modern references to 87 in relation to Midnight Motorist in stuff like Security Breach, I think. Um, but I think post Charlie's death, driving home from Freddy's, he comes home, and I think Michael is the runaway. And I'm sure we'll get more into detail on that.
Yes. We'll answer these two super chats first. Gur Logger asks, is he only purple from the children's perspective? Which could imply that since now we're seeing it not through the eyes of an animatronic or a ghost kid, we're seeing it from sort of, you know, objective view of God down on the scene. He could be a different color. I've never thought about that before.
Yeah, purple representing like shadows is interesting. You know, if he's this shadowy figure, him being represented by purple from the kid's perspective makes him this kind of creepy, alluring figure. But because we're him, he sees himself as this yellow, bright rabbit character, right? Like he would view himself as Spring Bonnie, I think, in the way that he views himself as Springtrap after he dies in the books. He feels like this kinship with his character, so I can see him viewing himself as yellow, whereas other people see him as purple.
Yeah, that's a great point. As someone who doesn't want that to be a great point, that is great. Because what, he's purple in FNAF 4 from Crying Child's perspective. In Foxy Go Go Go, so theoretically you're Foxy. In Save Him, it's either Charlie or like the bear that you're playing as. And then Save Them, it's your Freddy. So yeah, and then Follow Me, you're all the animatronics. And I think that's it. Yeah, because he doesn't appear again until like Into the Pit. So in every game you are playing as a child except for Midnight Motorist. That's a great point that I don't like. We have super chat from Sophie. To both of you, do you think William got his driver's license on the first try? I think if he didn't, he would have bribed someone.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know.
Did he get his license
sure
in Britain though, or in America first?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, if he got his license in England in like the I don't know what would have been like the 70s, the 60s. Maybe it was a little more lax.
All right, and then another one from Sam Doherty. Just joined the stream. Just joined the stream. We all agree we play as Edwin during Midnight Motorist, right?
Oh my gosh.
Um, I have never even considered that, and nor
Yeah,
sort of would I.
nor shall I.
Yeah, nor shall I.
Denied.
Sal's Corner. Ask this before. GiBi, if you were a mermaid, what would your tail color be? Probably like purple to blue, like as it goes down. I don't know, like scales, kind of like a spectrum of color.
Nice.
Okay, what do you think the mound is?
Yeah, I think I said purple. Oh no. Oh god.
William gets out of the car in 1983 after killing Charlie at this clearing in the woods, and there is a weird shape on the ground. What is it?
See, I'd like to say something like, "Oh, it's Elizabeth. It's Elizabeth's body," or "Oh, it's the crying child's body," or something like that. But the problem is because I believe it takes place in 83, there's sort of a much more limited amount of things that it could be. Um, I think there's a good argument that it's the box. Some things are best left forgotten for now. But then the size, like you were bringing up, is the size of it important, or was it just that big so that you could see it? Because it's a hard to see thing on the screen. I think Crying Child's body is not the worst idea. Potentially even the actual like Fredbear suit being possessed by Crying Child. I don't believe it's any sort of like entrance to the bunker or anything like that. That feels odd to me. The I know there's like the outline, like the clearing that you can see. I think that's more so to just represent this is the area you can walk around in. It's not, covered by the forest. I don't necessarily think it's like they're breaking ground on a new building or anything like that. And I don't think it's an entrance to the elevator because what you have to like dig up a bunch of dirt and then there's like a entrance to the elevator there or something. I don't know. I don't get that sort of reasoning. But it's either I think a body or the box. And I think there's some interesting options depending on what those things are.
So I want to, because I don't think anyone knew this until a couple days ago. I had our friend Fazbear Entertainment who is making a video about Midnight Motorist where he's going over so many details, and he did a poll asking like everyone what they believed. I had him make a thing that I'm trying to pull up on stream. This, then this. So basically, what you just said about like, oh, maybe the outline is just like the walkable area. That's actually not the case. And I didn't know this until Fazent pointed it out. So I'm uploading a video if this works. Will this work? Okay. So you'll have a little delay, but you should be able to see this on the stream. Yes, I'll mute that.
Yeah, this is he's made it without the scan lines and stuff.
Yeah, so this is a recreation. But when William goes to the clearing, I had him highlight the only walkable area. So what you're going to see here is the only place that the character can actually walk. It is a straight line to the left and then up. Orange guy cannot walk anywhere else.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. Yep. And I didn't know that till 2 days ago. I don't know if
I stand corrected then. That's very interesting.
Yeah. Because in my mind, that gives story symbolism function to that weird outline area.
Yeah. Yes, 100%, because then the player is actually physically constrained to have to walk up to the mound and then I'm flipping my argument. That's really interesting. That is to show that the minigame itself is guiding your hand. You should, by all logic, be able to walk in the discolored area, right? Because that's just the way the rest of the minigame works. but the fact you can't is showing that William is being drawn to the mound, that he cannot avoid it. That's really interesting.
So almost to the
And I would
effect of
think it
like,
might be a crying child or something like that then, yeah.
mm, this is an optional area. You actually don't need to go there to finish the mini game,
Yes.
but it's almost like by having the path be a straight line with no ability to go in other directions, it's like the canonical thing Orange Guy did was get out of the car, walk to the mound, and then walk back.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I might take that as well.
Yes. Yeah. That's a clever bit of storytelling because you're showing that there is, quote unquote walkable area, and that's why I think there's that like area being outlined with a different color, but that William is choosing to go that way. That's really cool. That's really, really cool. Man, Scott Cawthon can make games? Question mark. That's crazy.
Question mark.
Um, that's really cool. I did not know that. So then, given that bit of information, then I would more strongly believe it's something like Crying Child's Grave or Elizabeth's Grave or the box, if the box is representative of trying to move on from Crying Child.
Yes. So Hiboi left a comment saying, "Low-key, the mound might be the box too, in that it's something that was never followed up on and never had an answer."
Could be. I think the problem, not the problem with that line of thinking, but I suppose the trickiness of us now knowing that that can be a thing that happens in the series, for a fact, is that you can sort of say that for anything that you can't figure out. Like we could just say, "Oh, Midnight Motorist is the box," right? Like Scott doesn't know what any of it means. He was just
Edwin.
setting it up for something, and he never went there. So I'd be hesitant in the same way that I'm hesitant to say anything is the retcon because it's hard to lock down something without just using it as a way of getting out of explaining something. Saying the mound is the box, while yes, that could be 100% true, and I wouldn't be surprised if Scott said that, I don't think we should operate under the logic that if we can't figure out something, it's probably something Scott never explained, because that'll just lead to a bunch of things that we're going to use as examples of box isms.
With some, exceptions. Back, I think, FNAF 1 to 6, there were always unsolvable things between games.
Sure.
As a David Murray Toyshink person, it's not that Scott didn't know where it was going, it was just unsolvable for a couple games. If you were to talk to Tom, he'd be like, "Listen, we thought that the owner of Security Breach was Mrs. Afton for various reasons, and it ended up being Fiona Murray, which is like impossible for
Yeah.
us to have guessed at the time, but we got as close as we could with the information that we had." So I can see it being a something like that where there is an answer, we just haven't gotten there yet. I keep pointing this out, but Pizza Sim is when we're introduced to Spooky Fest, which I think is a precursor to Scott's concept of Fall Fest, which I think he did have sort of in the back of his mind for a long time.
Mhm.
So if making Midnight Motorist, he's like, "And this clearing is where Fall Fest burned down." I would not think that that's a bad. I wouldn't say, "Oh, but that was too long ago. Scott wouldn't have thought of that back in 2017." It's like, well, he might have.
Sure.
I just personally don't think it's that. Um,
Yeah, I think given that it is, I know it's a hidden part of that minigame. I think the nature of six being that the lore keeper ending requires you to do all these mini games. I know it doesn't require you to necessarily see the mound or go to the mound, but the idea of wrapping it all up and concluding it and sort of leaving us in a place that's a little bit more satisfactory is why I think Midnight Motorist is more likely to be something that Scott was trying to communicate, that was in his mind somewhat clear. Like he knew people would have to theorize about it and figure it out, but I think he thought he was being more clear than it ended up being because obviously we're still talking about it. But don't I don't know how I feel about the idea of it just being like a loose thread that's left
mm,
behind in the lore keeper ending, given the presentation of the minigame and the game itself.
yes. Someone in chat actually just posted exactly what I think it is. and they referenced another YouTuber where they heard the theory from, who I can verifiably say I've never seen. Um,
Okay.
it might be a thing where when I talk about it in my video, I might have to be like, I came to this conclusion on my own. But yeah,
Yeah.
someone in chat did post what I think, which I find interesting because I'm like, oh, I thought this was original. I thought I came up with this.
Which is, if you don't mind me
Um,
asking.
okay, so it's not my big slam dunk. I have a couple things in my video where people are going to go, oh my god. And I don't think this is necessarily it. Because of the limited places that you can walk based on what we just saw, I think it's really interesting that you can walk over the mound.
Hmm.
Also, again, throwing away 5 laps. I think that it's not a mound. I think it is freshly overturned dirt.
Okay.
So I think that William buries his cloth Spring Bonnie glitch trap esque suit in the
Okay.
ground, and that is what he was wearing in the rain to lure the kid from the window. That's why it's raining, because he was not in the spring trap suit, he was in a cloth suit, and he buries it in the ground when he doesn't need it. And we're supposed to figure this out because in Fruity Maze, the rabbit pops out of a rabbit hole. So it's literally a rabbit hole.
Yes. Yeah, that I do see as a good theory. My only so would you think that's Scrap Trap in the contents of 6?
Oh, yeah. Because Scrap Trap's not a Springlock suit, it's a different costume. Scott said that there's a reason that it's
Yeah.
different. So I think after FNAF 3, he goes and he gets his non Springlock suit, changes into it. That's what Scrap Trap is. It's the cloth suit he actually murdered the kids in. Or, that he
Hmm.
murdered the runaway in. Because he would have killed Susie as
Yeah.
Springtrap.
I'm trying to get more close-up images of Scrap Trap. Because I'm curious. The headpiece seems to have some sort of animatronic bits, but I don't actually see any on the body. It's all bone and guts. I'm not seeing really any endo parts, which is
Yep.
interesting.
Yep. I think that if the suit wasn't falling apart, it would look very similar to Glitch Trap. Help Wanted does have a different art style than the older games. Like, Freddy in Help Wanted looks
Yeah.
different than Freddy in FNAF 1. So I think the differences between Glitch Trap and Scrap Trap would be it's decayed and also it's a slightly different art style. Um, but yes, I do think that that's the same suit. And even if you
That'd be
don't
kind of
even if you don't think that Orange Guy isn't William, whatever, I still think that that's a good theory that Scrap Trap is the cloth suit.
yeah. He's got like wires and stuff on on his arms, but there's no endo. Like Springtrap, you can see the endoskeleton. Like you can literally see the metal. But Scrap Trap, it's all like bone and like regrown flesh,
Yeah,
except for the ears. But the ears don't necessarily mean that they're animated. They could just be like wire
yeah.
in that shape.
Yep.
That's okay. I'm on board. I'm on board. So he's burying his Scrap Trap suit. He uses it to lure somebody out from the back of the house and then buries the costume. Why
Well,
bury the costume?
so I think he has just recently unburied the costume. So William
Okay.
William goes to the woods, unburies the costume, puts it on, goes and lures the runaway. Orange Guy is coming home an hour later, sees the freshly tilled earth, goes home, and the kids run away to Freddy's.
Mhm.
Why would Scott choose to tell the story this way? It's like, well, we've learned that it was a Springlock suit, that he definitely killed at least the 2 kids who were killed on June 26th in. So it's almost like for some reason Scott came up with the idea of there is a second suit that is not a Springlock suit, and that's what Scrap Trap is, and I'll show that he was also killing in that one, and then in the next game we'll learn what Glitch Trap is, and not like literally what Glitch Trap is, but more to the effect of like then we'll see that suit in its full glory days in the VR thing, because he was working with Steelwool around Sister Location time. Um, so why can it not just be the Springlock suit? I don't know, but I think the reason that he has it raining is to show us it's not the Springlock suit, it's the cloth suit.
Just wonder why. Because if it's a cloth suit, then why is it being buried? Right? Like if it's the Springlock suit, maybe
Because
it's like, oh, I'm gonna bury it to keep it
be,
out of the rain, even
because
though
it
that makes no
has
sense.
to
But
it has to not be found by the Fazbear's Frights people or be destroyed in the fire. So it has to be that William doesn't keep it at work. He
William
hides
has
it.
another one hidden away
Yeah.
that he goes and finds post 3 to get repaired.
Yeah, so he hid it away before he was captured in 85, and then it has to still be out and about. And not only can, the authorities have never found it for story reasons, but there has to be a reason that the players never heard of it.
Well, would you not then say that given this like only walkable area thing that the player the person we are playing as, if we're doing this thing of like, oh, you have to be directed to go here, the idea would be that like this is the path he usually walks to uncover the mound, like is to dig up his suit.
Yeah, like the path is worn there because it might be, William was just there. So one of the details I don't have firmly down is the possibility that the thing that kind of looks like the foundation of a building might be like it can be a couple different things. But I'm like, if they were planning the FNAF 3 building back in Secret of the Mimic, then maybe Williams burying his suit there because the building's going to be built on top of it, so that'll hide the evidence forever. But then, like, it also says that it's part of an amusement park or something in the newspaper. So like, there's a bunch of different explanations you can put there for like he wants it to be underneath a building so that it's hidden forever or something.
Do you know, so like the thing about the area, right? Like the area that's being outlined there in the slightly different color. My argument, given this like only walkable path thing, what I'm saying is the reason that is there is not to say, oh, this is like a different part of the woods that's supposed to be a building or is supposed to be whatever. I'm saying it's a storytelling device to show that there is more walkable area, but our path is predetermined because of who we're playing as. That the area that we're going through, it's not that there is a slightly different colored path that we're only allowed to walk on, but there's also this other thing. It's that this entire area should be walkable, except we are forced into this little area of going in this right turn up to the mound because that's showing the person we're playing as is being drawn there, or that's their path that they usually take or whatever. The discoloration of the ground is not to be a shape to indicate something. It's to indicate that the game is forcing you on a particular path, even though logically you should be able to walk around the rest of the area.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, again, this is something that I think is so interpretive that it could be a lot of different
Yeah.
things. Let's say I agreed with what you just said. My orange guy isn't William response would be, yes, orange guy all night is following in William's footsteps. So it's like if he chose to get out
Mhm.
here, he would follow the path to the mound. He then gets to his house and he goes around back where he's seen the footprints. Scrap Trap has 3 toes. That's another really important thing.
Well, yeah, that's he
Yeah,
has the, like, in fairness, he does have the feet that are best matching, that best match that little
yeah.
um footprint on the floor. Yes, okay. Okay.
So and
I'm
again,
on board with that idea.
I'm only again I didn't want this to talk about my stuff. I only brought that up because someone in the comments said it.
No, but I appreciate the call out because,
Yeah.
like I said, I go back and forth so much that I'm obviously got a few things that I'm quite set on, or I believe quite strongly, but there's so many interpretations that I think it would be foolish of me to say this is the correct version and blah 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 blah. So I think it's interesting to go through all the different possibilities. Um in support of the idea that if this is supposed to be about Scrap Trap or some sort of origin for the Scrap Trap costume, are we sure that you can only walk in that area? Because I'm watching a video right now, some guy walking to the bottom of that that area.
Did my buddy lie to me?
Yeah, I'm watching. Has all of this been a lie? Have we spent so long talking about nothing? Look, I've got a screenshot here. Some guy
Yeah,
walking down to the bottom.
brother. I literally, Fazbear Entertainment was literally like, "Did you know you can only walk in this one exact spot?" And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I'll make a video for you about it." Oh yeah, that's down below. So everything I was just saying is wrong.
No.
It doesn't actually affect anything. I guess I'll have him redo that video thing he sent me because now it's not as useful. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting because as someone who's never actually played through Midnight Motorist, which I think that people probably should if they're going to be like theorizing about it, I was like, wow, it's crazy that like you can't walk around the box. He's like, yeah, you can't. So yeah, that part's wrong, I guess. So guys, this I don't know if you guys can see my mouth.
Oh yeah, no. Literally in the same video, there's also this screenshot where he walks up to the top. This guy.
So you can just walk. You can walk literally anywhere in the gray colored section.
Father on YouTube with the picture of the guy from Fallout 4. He basically made this video debunking what we've been talking about because he walks up to the very top of the hill as well.
Sigh.
That's really funny. I wonder where he got that idea from.
He said he was playing through the game. He's like, guys, did you know that you can only walk in a straight line? Like he was in a voice chat streaming. That's so funny.
That's bizarre. I almost want to open the game now and see if it was some sort of update or something. Because this did come from 2017, this video, so maybe there was a change. If anyone has FNAF 6 installed right now and has a save where they could go into Midnight Motorist, please do so and shout us out in the chat.
Anyway, I only pointed that out earlier because I found it interesting. It's not actually important for at least either of our theories.
No, but
yeah,
I'm glad because I would have gone forward and been like, oh my god, I got to reevaluate everything I know. But
yeah,
but still, that's really funny.
Bro sent it to me this morning because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do a Midnight Motorist stream.
There is a path there because I just pulled it up and you were put on a path. I pulled it up earlier. It says Ham's imminent. Okay, I'm really confused. I don't have F6 installed, and I don't have a save on this computer that would have that.
If anyone has Midnight Motorist, can you walk around the entire quote-unquote house section? That's the question I guess we're looking for.
I'm in the game right now. The mat is open, and it's Bowser.
No! The stream! Are we still here? Are we still alive? Okay. We're good. Okay, while we're waiting for our chat to do our job for us, so you're being non-committal about the mound. Would you, if someone gave a very compelling reason that it is Crying Child, would you go, okay, I guess that means, let's say Elizabeth. First. I guess that means
all right.
Elizabeth first, like before Charlie, or Crying Child before Charlie, or like, yeah, would you adjust your death order if there was a really compelling mound theory?
So, like every theory, they're all based on other theories. So, like I said earlier, there's good evidence for Midnight Motorist 87, but I don't think Charlie died first, and I do think Midnight Motorist happens after Charlie's death. So I disregard certain pieces of evidence. So in the case of if someone made a really good argument for like, oh, it's definitely Elizabeth's grave, then I would say, okay, well, if that's a compelling argument, now I have to evaluate whether or not I think that this actually takes place after Charlie's death or not. Because I think the evidence of Charlie's death is strong. And if someone were able to convince me that the evidence of the mound was strong, then I'd have to reevaluate my other beliefs, which are not as, set. I think personally, given that the car is the focus of the minigame, given the raining, the later that night, obviously it can rain on any night because it can be moody, and we've seen with like the video that Fazent sent that the minigame doesn't look very good without the scan lines in the rain. So it could just be a mood piece, right? It could just be something to set the tone. But I think given that we are specifically being put in the car from the Save Him minigame, the minigame in Security Puppet has the tire marks on the floor. We start this game by driving really fast. I think all of that sort of ties together to say this makes sense to come right after Charlie's death. So would I necessarily reevaluate my death order? Not necessarily, but I might look at this game in a new light and go, okay, which is more likely? Is it more likely that this game is after Charlie's death and Elizabeth died before Charlie? Or is it more likely that Charlie still died, before Elizabeth, but this minigame is set some other time and those are coincidences? It's hard to say. I'd have to hear the argument and be like, okay, that's compelling or not compelling for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Yeah. Jan Verb just donated saying, I think it's because you can't walk when you're pressing two moving keys, so it might seem like there are invisible walls when you try to walk diagonally. So, like, if Fazent was playing and he tried to go up and to the left at the same time, it wouldn't work. So that's that might explain it.
Really funny.
That's really funny. Yeah. So you think that, and we can assume that the box might be a stand-in for something to do with Cece's death, but the mound is something to do with Crying Child. His body, the box of his toys, like, it is there because Crying Child died as some sort of
that would be
thing, like monument or hiding spot even.
I think so. I think it's sort of like out of the way placement. And the fact that we have later on someone disappearing to some place might tie into it. But I think, given where I think it takes place in the timeline, that would be a relevant thing to come up.
Because it's days or weeks or months after Crying Child's death. If he died in the spring and Charlie died the same year and it's raining, it's like it could be very soon after.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, even if it's not super specific, I'll take that. It is a Crying Child-ism, and I think part of that is just that FNAF 4 makes no sense.
That's what I think this minigame is ultimately about. I think this game is ultimately about FNAF 4. Now, again, what specifically it's saying about FNAF 4, we could talk about that, but I think we have Charlie's death being clarified because Save Him was being retconned, right? It's a girl, it's Henry's daughter, blah, 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 blah. That's all being retconned. We got to show that. MCI, most important event in the timeline, other than, of course, like Crying Child's death, but as in most influential on the franchise as a whole, even from a meta perspective. And then what's going on with FNAF 4? What's going on with Michael and all the stuff with the FNAF 4 house, all that kind of stuff. I think that's all being tied in here. I think that's what's going on. I think that's why Scott would make this minigame and what he would most likely want to talk about.
Okay, so
that's his like third minigame.
Yeah, the three minigames for the Lore Keeper endings: Charlie Death, MCI, Michaelisms. Right at the exact aftermath of FNAF 4. Michael's now running away. He's being disobedient. Yes. William's like getting drunk and killing Charlie, and the thing in the woods is what they did with Cece or something.
Yes.
Yeah. I follow. All right. So what's Junior's?
Junior's is a bar. I
Correct.
hesitate every second. Every response I give, I hesitate. But I think that if this is indeed, as I'm claiming, the kind of the FNAF 4 aftermath, the idea here is to show the outcome of what happened to Crying Child and why that led to the first death, which was Charlie's. Was William was depressed in a depressive stupor. Sorry, guys, he did actually kind of care when Crying Child died.
Gasp.
Um, Gasp, I know. Uh, Not saying it's good, his reaction, obviously. It's a little over the top, but I think he was kicked out. He drove off, killed Charlie, came back, and now he's not being let back in. Don't make this harder than it has to be, is what Green Guy says. Um, there's other cars outside. I think the reason the other cars are there is to show that we are driving a unique car, in that it's not just like the Midnight Motorist part where it's like all the cars are the same color. This is showing, no, this is a unique car. It's not like the other ones around, and it's just this local place. I think the bar being named Juniors is relevant if the story is as I've suggested, because it means that he was drowning his sorrows in a bar named Juniors after his son has died.
Hmm. Yeah, that, I think that the cars being in the parking lot and the green guy outside could be specifying that it is a bar slash restaurant, and a lot of people who say it's the FNAF 2 location. It the cars there to me disprove that, because why would the FNAF 2 location have a bunch of cars there at midnight? Why would a
Yeah.
Freddy's have that many people there? A bar would. Of course a bar is open at midnight. Why would it be a Freddy's? And so that's why I'm very strongly, even if I was an Afton Orange Guy theorist, it would be, it's a bar. A couple people in chat just said they're playing Midnight Motorist. You can, Gubsy said, can confirm you can traverse the entire area but cannot do diagonals. And Ham says, the path was there for a bit and then I broke out of it somehow. There were invisible walls that I couldn't pass through, but I could still roam around the area. So maybe Fazant just like happened to hit all the invisible walls. That's so interesting. That's so odd.
Do we think it's like possibly when you go into the area first, there are invisible walls and then they disappear after a minute?
We might have to investigate. Like, you might have to. I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
Maybe I can
If anyone
install.
has a click team, like I don't know if we know anyone that knows their way around click team and all the different like ways of getting into the files, but that might be something to look at, because it could be interesting if there is some sort of pathing that's supposed to exist but maybe breaks or something like that.
So Seeker just said in chat that why would a bar be named Juniors? It seems more likely there would be some sort of child's restaurant. I disagree. I think that Juniors is kind of exactly what that kind of old-fashioned, bar, especially in the 70s or 80s. This was my dad's and now it's Juniors. A fishing shop, would be named Juniors Bait and Tackle, like that. It's just that kind of name. It has that vibe of a sort of
Yeah.
low quality southern bar in the woods.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, whether it's a bar or a diner that serves alcohol, it's some sort of just like small establishment.
Yep.
Because we've never had any sort of reference to a juniors, right, in the rest of the series,
No.
in terms of like we've never heard of a Freddy's Juniors or a Fredbear Juniors. Maybe you could argue, oh well, if the character of Freddy is the son of Fredbear, maybe he's the junior, and like you can come up with all those. But the fact of the matter is just that we have never seen a restaurant referred to as Juniors or JRs or whatever you're supposed to pronounce it as.
Yep. The logic a lot of people use who want it to be the FNAF 2 location is that, it's the second FNAF location, so it's Juniors. There's a restaurant chain called Charles Juniors in America, where it's like there's Carl's and then there's Carl's Jr. Some people, I
Right.
think Hardee's is related to it or something. But it's like, yeah, the second restaurant, the first restaurant we made was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. The second restaurant we made was Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Junior because it's the sister location, it's the spin-off, it's the whatever.
And it's supposed to be
Um,
kid friendly, so you'd want to show that it's a kid's,
yes,
you
we're
know,
safe for
it's
kids.
specifically branded. Yeah, but it's
The
like it's also, the sign is just juniors,
yeah.
right? It's not. There's no other branding around it. Even the building itself is very bare, and I
No,
know
it's
obviously the
not
scale of
very
all the buildings.
bare. There's not a bear there. If there was a bear
Sorry, right?
there, it would be a Freddy's.
There's barely anything on it. Um, I I guess Scott could be trying to obscure the fact that it's a Freddy's location, and but it just seems an odd choice to go with a name that we've never heard before or since, and then like we have to do these like mental gymnastics to be like, okay, it's a Freddy's place, but it's under a name that's supposed to imply, people even say, oh, well, Jeremy and Fritz are the people that work at the FNAF 2 location, and there are the dead kids, Jeremy and Fritz, so they would be the sons of those two guards, so it would be a junior's location, and obviously the thing. I remember before even like Fazant, kind of came on the scene with Charlie 87. I was in a stream. I believe you might have been there, and I had like thought up. Oh my God, what if Juniors is the FNAF 2 location? Because the guy at the front says that nobody's allowed in or out.
Yeah.
Oh my God! But then I was like, oh wait, well there's other cars there. So when is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be night 5? Because then they'd be looking for him presumably. The fact it's a neon sign as well, it's like, and it's flashing on and off. It's giving like, CD dive bar kind of vibes.
Yes, I agree. Springlock James does bring up kind of what you were just saying as far as the literal juniors, which is that Edwin is a junior. Edwin Murray Sr. and then Edwin Murray Jr.
Yeah,
I have heard a lot of people saying that perhaps it is something to the effect of, like in Sister Location, Chica now has her own restaurant again, and she's not part of Circus Babies. So it's
sure.
like, what if um, the Edwin Murray characters had their own
Yeah, the mediocres went to
secondary
juniors.
location? Again, the mediocres would be great because it's they're introduced in Pizza Sim.
Yeah.
About I think it was back in October, about 6 months ago, I woke up from a dream and I texted you. Um,
Mhm.
and I was in a hotel room, so it was either 6 months ago or it was a year ago. And
Yeah.
I was like, I figured out juniors. It's not juniors, it's JR, and it's short for Jolly Roger, and it's Foxy's Diner. And I'm like, I've solved it. It's Foxy's Diner because everyone else gets one,
Yeah.
and this is like it's his restaurant, and it's just showing us that they all had their own thing before they were brought together, and that solves literally nothing else, and it's never been addressed again. And now we know that Foxy and Roxy were made by Edwin, so it's like,
Yeah.
it might have
Oh,
worked, but it definitely did not.
yeah. Yeah, it's also like there's a few leaps you got to make to I think the problem with other explanations of juniors is that you got to make a few leaps before you get to the like the crux of what this would be and why Scott would put it here. And if it's the FNAF 2 location, my question is always, where is he coming from? Because he's not at juniors, he's somewhere else, and then he comes to juniors having been kicked out of there already. So was he just somewhere else and this is not later that night of anything? Is it he did the DCI already, then got kicked out, then left, went somewhere that's not important, came back, and then the guy's like, don't come back again? That's I have obviously been down the same thought processes and the same path in terms of, okay, where's the only other place in the series that we see somebody not be let into a building? It's FNAF 2. Oh, could this be FNAF 2? But all the other details surrounding it get too murky to make it anything
Well,
other than, I think what would be more interesting is the kind of the simpler explanation, which also ties in thematically with what I think is going on in the minigame.
that's where I know Charlie 87 comes from the Grave Order and Help Wanted too, but that's where Charlie 87 fixed this exact scenario where Freddy's 2
Yeah.
is closing down, and if Charlie just died, then it can be him still fleeing Charlie, but it's also closed down. But I guess he was just that he was going for a drive. It's like, I killed Charlie because I'm drunk,
I
and then
guess
I
he
go for a
he
drive, and then I
flees
came
the scene
back.
of the crime and then doesn't come back for a little while, and he returns to the scene of the crime, and by that stage they've already made the decree of nobody's allowed in or out. The problem is in FNAF 2, the investigation is ongoing for a long time, and then it's only after they discover the kind of the important information about the yellow suit, about the spare in the back, the yellow one, that they then say, okay, nobody's allowed in or out, the place is on lockdown. And at that point, it's implied that William's already on the run. So,
Yeah.
you know, it seems that William left at some point the day before or something like that. I think if he was literally that night was on the run and he got to the front door, presumably he has to be under an alias or something, right? He can't live up the road because then the police would be there. There's more problems that I think are created by the idea of juniors being FNAF 2 than are solved. Even if you think Charlie 87, even if you believe Charlie 87, I think it's better for your theory if he kills Charlie away because he drank at juniors and left.
I also, my main thing with juniors being a bar is that when Orange Guy gets home, he is belligerent and yelling at his kid and being irrational, and the wife is clearly like tired of this kind of thing because like he acts this way consistently, and he was just driving really fast. I think that the bar is there to hammer home that he is very drunk and
Yeah.
that he's abusive.
And
Like,
again,
that's the point.
it's also a thing that you can miss. It's not a required part of the minigame. You can drive past it. It's more like world building, more context for what's happening in the minigame. I think the idea as well of it being juniors. I mentioned the idea that if this is post crying child's death and he's upset over the death of his kid, whether it's because he thinks he's a trophy or whatever. It's also interesting that if he just killed Henry's daughter, then the juniors, which is possessive, becomes plural. The two juniors that are relevant to the minigame, the two kids that were killed, and then also we go home and Michael's run away.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the game is about the children. Because he is sad about crying child's death, he goes and he kills Charlie, which is his partner's death, and then he comes home and Michael has run away. So it's like the three children who are important to the story are important to Midnight Motorist.
Yes.
Don't know about Elizabeth, but where is she? She's in the mound.
Yeah.
Oh no.
I mean, it's also interesting if you look at the green guy, right? Where does green show up in the rest of the game? It's the security puppet's wristband color for Charlie. Now, some people might go, "Oh, what that means? It's Henry, right?" I would say if this is the guy that kicked him out, then the idea that it leads to the death of Charlie with the green wristband is like, again, we're tying what's happening in this minigame to what's happened in the other minigame. We're linking the two using themes and symbolism, right? Like he,
the car
might
tracks
symbolically have an issue with the green guy, so he kills the girl who's represented by green.
Yeah, and the thing that a lot of people point to, which for me I don't find compelling, but people do talk about it, is you can hear a car honking in Fruity Maze, and the implications that it was a car that hit Susie's dog. And there's the car tire tracks in Security Puppet, and then you're speeding in a car in Midnight Motorist, and so it's like, oh, it's the three car things. It's what links together the minigames. I personally say, like, yes, that links together the minigames, but because Fruity Maze happens 2 years later, it's like it's linking together that there are cars. It is not linking together that they're sequential. But people have used that.
I really want to come up with a way of linking them together. I know John FNAF did his whole video talking about that exact idea, and I think it is interesting. Smashing Windshields is the title of the the song that
Hmm.
plays in Midnight Motorist, which, by the way, if anyone didn't know, is a not it's not a cover, but it's a reference to I can't remember what the song is.
It's a Green Day
It's a
song.
reference. It's a reference to a song about drunk driving, um,
Hitching a Ride, I think.
and
Someone was saying it earlier in
hitching
chat.
a ride. That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's like if you know the is literally just hitching a ride. It's a great song. Um, so if you're curious if the rest of it is all backed up by the song, the idea of him being a drunk driver is being backed up by that sort of
Yep.
reference being made.
Which again, to me, is further Juniors as a bar evidence
Right.
because he's
Yeah.
drunk. Yeah. Eric says, "I can immediately walk anywhere in that dirt path. I think Phazant is just wrong." Oh no.
That's so funny.
Unfortunate.
That's interesting. In the lyrics of "Hitching a Ride," there's a line that says, there's a drought at the fountain of youth, and I'm dehydrated." That's cool. Um,
Because yeah, immortality stuff.
yes.
People are saying, green is also a color tied to Edwin if he's like Monty Alligator, and it's Juniors.
Yeah,
Sigh.
I mean, people also say like, oh, that the house, if it's the Edwin Murray house, that it's the same location as where MCM should be.
Yeah.
So maybe it's what's left of MCM. I I don't know. I think that Afton does inherit the house, and like I know he says he literally does inherit the house, but like the path to Afton's house to me is it's all broken up and it gets smaller and smaller as you get away from the main road. I think it's supposed to be showing that this is a like off the beaten track in the middle of nowhere house. Like that path that we drive along. I don't know if the space is exactly literal in terms of how much space there is to get to his house versus the bar, but I think it's just showing us this place is out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I think it was Corey and Connie who did a big thing where they're trying to line up the Midnight Motorist map with the Costume Manor.
Yes.
And it's just like, the Costume Manor and then a driveway and then the house. And it's like, oh yeah, Juniors and then a driveway and then the house. And it's like, well, it's basically a straight line between two buildings. How compelling is that? Because in Midnight Motorist, it's like a U shape. It's not even like a direct straight line.
Yeah.
Um, and it doesn't appear that the Midnight Motorist house is like on a hill. There are trees, so I guess it's hard to tell. But like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily say like, oh yeah, this is definitely up on a hill. And then the scale for
Yeah.
Juniors to be the Costume Manor would be all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, it crossed my mind the idea that the mound could be the grave that we see at the end of the Lorekeeper ending up on the top of the hill, and that the reason the space is so big is that it's like up on top of a hill, and that the other graves will eventually line up at the bottom. But that's pure speculation, and there's nothing to suggest that like this is any higher than anywhere else. There's no change in size, there's no change in color, there's no sort of depth being implied by this area.
Mhm. Someone else in chat
And
is playing Midnight Motorist, and they said that there are invisible walls, but at some point it opens up to having a bigger range, and they can move diagonally. So everyone's been wrong.
everyone,
Everyone's got
that's so
something
funny.
wrong. Okay, someone in chat is asking a question. So I did not come up with this. I heard this somewhere almost 4 years ago, which is the idea that every character in Midnight Motorist is. Oh wait, never mind. Because you. Okay, before this, who do you think the runaway is?
Michael.
Okay, never mind. So the people who think the runaway is Crying Child, they're like, the last time we saw the Crying Child, he was scared of Freddy's. Why would he be running there? The last time we saw Mike, he was bullying Crying Child. Why would he tell William to stay away from him?
Yeah.
So I do think that that's a big Crying Child does not run away evidence. But if that's not what you believe, then you don't need to defend that.
So I have gone back and forth on this, and I think there is we can talk about it as an interpretation, but it's not the one that I currently subscribe to, just because of several other things. I mean, we're talking about the map right now of Midnight Motorist, people have lined it up with the map in FNAF 4 of, oh, well, Fredbear's would be juniors, and there's a path that goes right and then down and then left. If you turn the FNAF 4 map on its side, it goes right, then down, then left, and that leads you to the house. And that's the same thing as shown in FNAF 4. But FNAF 4 is clearly in a neighborhood with other people around that has a solid, like, tarmac road that's got lines and
Storm
like a
drains.
playground. And yeah, and obviously the distances aren't necessarily what's the word, accurate,
Mhm.
but they are showing that the distance from Fredbear's to Crying Child's house is a short walk, right? It's like nearby, which I think works even in FNAF 4 to say, oh, maybe these guys had something to do with the business because they live so nearby. But Midnight Motorist, it's like, no, you drive down this really long, narrow path into the middle of the woods, and you arrive at a house in the middle of a clearing in the woods. Not there's a tarmac road and like fencing and a little cute playground and a bunch of kids. Like this does not. These are not the same house. They cannot be. I refuse to accept it. If people think that they are the same, I understand why people think they're the same. I just don't think that's necessarily the case.
Yeah, it's why I found the clearing being like the foundation of the FNAF 4 house compelling, because the scale of the clearing being the FNAF 4 house and juniors being Fredbear's makes a little more sense to me. It's like, oh yeah, give it like a couple years and this area could be slightly more developed and it is just still right down the road. Um, but yeah, I don't. That's
Yeah,
not what
but
I
like
currently believe.
an
But yeah,
entire neighborhood has to get built up in the next, and like juniors has to get replaced with Fredbear's, and everything has to get completely altered from being this middle of the nowhere woods to being like a full neighborhood.
yeah, 2 to 3 years. Of course, that would put Midnight Motorist in like 1979 for some reason. But yeah,
I just feel like that's a
um,
lot to happen in a few years
no,
in Utah in the 80s or in the 70s or
in
whenever this
Utah.
would hypothetically be happening.
Yep.
Um, I think if there is an argument to be made about the similarities between the houses, again, I would argue it's metaphorical. It's showing that even like, okay, so if the idea is Crying Child just died, right? Like during this year, they move to get away from the memory of it all, and Fredbear shuts down, and they move out into the middle of nowhere to be alone, so William can mope and abuse his kids and not have to think about anything. Um, then the idea that this place that he's moved to still mirrors visually the place that he was trying to escape, and it all comes and it wraps around and it ends up with him killing Charlie. I think all of that works really well. It doesn't literally have to be the same location. It could be a parallel, or it could just be in a mini game where you can only move in four directions. There's a limited amount of space that you can move, and a little bit of amount of ways you can lay this map out.
Yep. Um. Okay. Let's move on. Orange guy William gets home. Who is on the couch
Mrs. Afton.
after Cece's death?
Yes.
Where is she in FNAF 4?
Where's William in FNAF 4?
At work.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so she's just like not
Maybe she's at
around.
work,
They're
or she's,
not
or
divorced or whatever
as we
yet.
see in this, or we see in this game, she's sort of like distant, right? Like she says, "Oh, hey, don't maybe can you not abuse your son tonight?" And William's like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." She doesn't like get up and like run after William and pull him away from the door and be like, "No, don't hurt our kid." Like she's sitting on the couch. She's a couch vegetable, watching TV. I think again we're just seeing this like result of everything that's gone wrong. Is it's sort of broken everything, and it's just resulting in worse and worse things going on. So Mrs. Afton, maybe she was more active in the kids' lives before David died. Maybe she wasn't. The point is we don't see any sort of adult supervision. Obviously, it's a broken home before Crying Child dies. Um, and if you've got William Afton as your husband, it's probably not a great space to live in. And Michael Afton is your son. before FNAF 4.
Yes. I don't think it's
The
impossible,
reason
but do you think that she's
the
gone by the
reason
time of future games?
yeah, I'd say if anything happened, the best hint we have at what could have happened was as it was pointed out in Security Breach in Vanessa's backstory, quote unquote, that she tried to take the kids. Um, William manipulated events so that Elizabeth basically had to lie, and the mother died. Um, she commits suicide as the implication um, of that tape. I think that's an explanation for it. I don't necessarily know. We'll see how that all turns out with what they were trying to say with Vanessa's quote unquote backstory. Um, but I think that's an explanation for what happened. I think the reason it's more likely to be Mrs. Afton rather than someone like Henry who's babysitting, or I don't know. Some people have said like William's parents or something, or like his dad or his mom or something, is the visual parallel to Michael sitting on the couch, which is why I have in the past considered Michael potentially being the one on the couch, because what does Michael do? He sits on TV, he sits on the couch and he watches TV. That's like one of the few character traits we have of any character in the whole series. So when you put a character sitting in front of the TV, that means something, right? So I think if it is a Mrs. Afton, it makes sense to show that Michael might take after his mother a bit more. And we know that Michael relates to Clara in the logbook, and Clara represents the mother of the child that William will recognize, yada, yada, yada. Mrs. Afton is on the couch. Not Aunt Jane, unfortunately.
Even if it was Aunt Jane, Scott could just be like, she's not important. Like, I don't need to, specify later or clarify that it was her. All that matters is that it's an adult. And, like, if you want to learn more about her, there's a version of her in the novels, and there's a version of her in the movies. And, it's just a
Yeah.
female sister or something that exists.
Yeah.
Um,
And the reason I think it's not like again Henry or something like that is she says she first of all she has the some form of authority to communicate with William in a direct manner. Um, Leave him alone tonight. That's like a direct statement. He had a rough day. So whoever this is has been with Michael all day, or is at least aware of what he's been doing all day. He had a rough one. He's been upset. Leave him alone, but also doesn't intervene. And I think it's like, would Henry just sit there? Like, why would Henry be there? Is that supposed to be tragic because he didn't even know because he was killing Charlie? But it's like, I don't know. I just don't see any reason for Henry to be there represented in this way. It comes across more to me as a parent who has been broken and wants to do the right thing, but just doesn't have the energy or the capacity to do that right now. That's what I kind of get from
yeah.
the situation.
Good guy Josh has a good point. It could be Balloon Boy.
Ah, a balloon boy on the couch. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, you're right. MM87 balloon boy couch. Uh,
So, okay. Michael's the runaway. William knocks on the
yes,
door. It's 1987. Goes outside, windows broken, footsteps on the ground.
83. I think it's 83.
83. Oh my gosh, 83. So it's kind of like a little while after he has, killed Cece.
Yeah.
What are the footprints?
Um. So, not taking into account what we were talking about earlier with the scrap trap suit or whoever that could potentially tie in, I think if it's post crying child's death, um, and Michael's the runaway, I think it makes sense for Golden Freddy or Shadow Freddy to be the one leading Michael away. Follow me, it's me.
And then where is Michael going?
Personally, I think the only logical explanation for like based on the minigame's design for him to go is the mound. I genuinely don't think there's a better answer than that. regardless of what you think is going on. If there is a location that he's going to and he's not being led to be killed somewhere, people say Freddy's. He's gonna, or if it's the crying child, he's being led to Freddy's or to Fredbear's, and he's going to see Charlie outside. Blah blah blah. If you think Charlie was killed by William and then he drove here, that means he had to drive on the highway at like 100 miles an hour, and and so what? Michael's gonna run along the highway for like hours and eventually end up outside. I don't see anywhere else in the minigame that it makes sense to say he went there because Junior's is a bar. Why would he be going to a bar if he's a kid that's being locked in his room? If he's going to Freddy's, he has to make a tremendous journey to get there, and it would be odd to say like, oh, he's going back there again, which means that this is a common thing that he does. Um, I think the mound makes the most sense based on my interpretation of the story.
Especially if it's a Golden Freddy or a Shadow Freddy luring Mike outside and you think that what's in the woods is the box or Crying Child's body. It's like,
Yes.
yeah, that's where he's going. I'm pretty sure that that's like the standard Matt, Pat, John explanation. Um,
I don't know. A lot of people seem to think it's going to Freddy's. I've heard that a lot as of late. Is oh, he's leading him to Freddy's, and
yeah.
I'm like, how?
Well,
William
okay.
just came from Freddy's, and
So,
it's a really long drive away.
from I I'm allowed to say that he's going to Freddy's because Freddy's could be, 200 yards away through the woods because to me Orange Guy
Sure,
doesn't have to be coming from Freddy's.
sure.
So, there's
Where do you
the
think Orange Guy is coming from? By the way, just
Oh,
curious.
I think he's just driving around. I think he's drunk. He's just chilling.
He's just going for a drive.
Yeah. I don't think that they're in Utah at midnight. The road he's coming from is not a 4-lane highway that has, dozens of cars speeding by because it's
Sure.
midnight. Like it's very obviously not super literal. It could still be a highway,
Yeah.
but it's not
Yes.
that literal. Seeker
Yeah.
of Compiness has been shouting this entire time, saying that Juniors is some sort of establishment that allows children, not necessarily a Freddy's. That William wants to go in there because it's where Crying Child is and they won't let him in. So CC broke out the window, went to Juniors. William can't get him because he's banned
Well, William thinks he's at home.
until
He
the
doesn't
end.
find out that he's left until he goes outside.
Yes, that would be my response. I just felt like I had to read it because they posted it like 6 times.
Okay.
So, to okay, does does Michael come back and William punishes him, or is Michael then estranged at age 14 until sister location? Like, what happens next, timeline wise?
So the kind of like the simplest answer would just be this is showing the life that Michael had leading up to like sister location, or just his life in general before we know him and after FNAF 4. Um which would turn him to be the type of person that might want to get revenge on his dad and track him down, right? That's the simple answer is William's a horrible father. He's taking out his grief on Michael because he blames Michael for what happened. The end. Um Crackpot theory would be he will be sorry when he gets back. Is Scott like backwards um is explaining the FNAF 4 bedroom in sister location is not necessarily that William here is like, oh, he ran off again, time to build robots to torture him, but like it's the setup of okay, Michael is a problem when he's left to his own devices. He'll be sorry when he gets back. I'm going to punish him. I'm going to figure out a way of scaring him. Then it leads to the nightmares in what we see in sister location. If you believe Michael is the one going through the nightmares, then this is like like I said, I think FNAF 4, especially post sister location, needed some sort of explanation or some sort of, you know, uh, cleaning up. And I could see Scott being like, oh, yeah, we're going to show that Michael leaves the house when he's not supposed to. He's running away. So William figures a way to lock him inside as he's gonna put him in these things and force him to be scared of leaving or scared of the animatronics or whatever. Um, I think that might be a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's one way you could look at the sort of the thought process uh behind telling Midnight Motorist at all.
Yeah, and it makes sense as a gap to fill in the timeline, as you keep saying. The other two mini games
Yeah.
are things we already know that happened are important. This is showing us something that happened that was maybe only previously implied, and also answering other questions.
If the box is where he's running to, just say the box is in the mound and that's where he's being led to, the idea of some things are best left forgotten for now might might fit into that like he's like obsessed with going and finding out what's in this box. He's obsessed with like hunting it down, and some things are best left forgotten for now because every time I try and go look at it, my dad freaks out and like ruins my life. Might be a way of looking at that.
Yeah, it all follows. One of the things that makes me on sort of a meta level, which a lot of people don't like using as reasoning, the same way that you're like, well, Scott's a good writer, so he wouldn't write that. A lot of people don't find it compelling. I find it compelling to an extent, which is that nobody agrees. Nobody agrees on what the mound is, when it's taking place, what Junior's is, who the runaway is, who the
Yeah.
orange guy is, why, where he's coming from, what later that night means. Um, you yourself have just kind of this whole time been like, well, the mound is like something crying child adjacent. It's the box, or it's
Yes.
whatever.
Yeah.
And where's Mike going? Well, we can presume this based on the timeline of whatever.
Yeah.
Do you think that if someone came forward with a more compelling narrative, that would outweigh potentially your evidence, quote unquote? Like,
Uh,
why do we think that it's the night of Charlie's death? Because of later that night being the name of the files, because of the skid marks in Security Puppet, because it's raining.
yeah.
Like those are three reasons. But if someone said, I have come up with a solution that solves everything, but it has to be the night of the DCI. It's not Charlie, it's the DCI. Would you
Yeah.
then be willing to throw away the rain, tire marks, and whatever connection? If you're like, oh, that makes more
So
sense.
this is yeah, so like again, like I was saying earlier, with if it was someone made a really solid argument for Elizabeth being in the mound, it's I then have to weigh up everything in relation to everything else because it doesn't stand alone. The minigame is in relation to everything else going on, not just in this game, but in the whole series. So if somebody came and was like, okay, here is a solid explanation for literally everything in the minigame, and all you need to do is agree that the minigame takes place in 1987 and it's right after the DCI. And so the three minigames are Charlie's death, the MCI, and the DCI. And they have an explanation for the mound that makes sense. They have an explanation for why he's yellow. They have an explanation for what Junior's is. They have an explanation for who the person is on the couch, etc., etc., etc. What I would look at then in terms of the evidence that I use to say, oh, I think it makes sense to set this after Charlie's death, is I'd look at, okay, well, first of all, I'd look at Charlie's death and I'd say, okay, is it more compelling if Charlie's death happens the same time as the DCI, or it is the DCI, or whatever? I'd look at that first. And if I still didn't find that to be compelling, and I still thought Charlie was more likely to have died earlier, but I also believe this new Midnight Motorist 87 theory, then what I would have to consider is, in given this new hypothetical evidence that exists for Midnight Motorist 87 DCI, whatever, is there an understandable, logical follow through on all of these connections from a storytelling point of view, right? Like I've been saying stuff like, "Oh, it makes sense that the layout of the buildings matches the FNAF 4 house because it's like metaphorically you can't escape the event that started everything, yada yada yada." So, I'm doing that a little bit already. So maybe what I'd say is, "Oh, well, Fruity Maze ends with the reference to the car. He hit the dog with the car." And the Charlie minigame ends with them driving away in the car. And so this minigame also has us in the car because we're linking not the three not two of the events being linked and one of them being separate. What we're doing is we're showing that this car, which is the color that we associated with William in previous games, is not like it's not necessarily representative of him as a person, how he views himself, but like this car is like symbolically central to everything that has happened. And it's important that we see it in Midnight Motorist because X, Y, and Z. That's how I'd look at that. I'd go, what is the reason that it's raining? And raining in Security Puppet? What is the reason of us being in the
Mm.
car that we drive away from Security Puppet in? It's because it means something more to the story. And I'm sure I could wax poetic about it for the next 10 minutes and come up with something, but I would need that evidence to first of all convince me that it makes more
Mm.
sense than just saying car he drives away in ends up as car we're driving in the next game.
Yeah. Um, there's a lot of theories I have where I'll be like, here's my 5 points of evidence. And then someone will come up with, a different theory. And I find that one more convincing. And so now I start believing that one. But it requires me to say that my previous piece of evidence, like, isn't true. So, for example,
Yeah.
the difference between the crying child being named David versus Cassidy. So when I
Sure.
was originally talking about like Fate Fiona, I was like, oh my god, her name is Cassie in Ruin, and that's an echo
Yes.
forward of the female vengeful spirit being Cassidy. And when Glamrock Body is dead, there's the four floorbots, and then Cassie is the fifth person. And when William gets spring locked, there's the four ghosts that don't do anything, and then the vengeful spirit is Cassidy. And so like this is a perfect echo. And I thought I'm like that's really really strong evidence. And then when I started thinking more that the crying child's name might be Cassidy and that, Vengeful Spirit's David Murray, well, then it became like, okay, do I think the person who chased William into the suit is Crying Child, so the Cassidy Cassie connection still works? Or do I think
Yeah.
that the name isn't super important? Like, Cassie is still echoed after Crying Child, but Gregory isn't an echo name for it of anyone, so it was never that strong to begin with. So I went from being like, this is so compelling to,
Yeah.
well, this other new thing I believe kind of contradicts that, but I want to believe this new thing, so I'm just gonna kind of
Yeah.
throw that away.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, that whole Cassie idea, I've toiled with it in my head as well. Like, maybe if Cassidy is a character that is separate from Crying Child and Crying Child's the vengeful spirit, then Cassidy would be the one that's helping put him back together. So she would actually mirror Cassie more because Cassie's the one that helps people and she saves the animatronics, and Gregory is the one that destroys them and wants to break them down. So that parallel would still work, but just with the common interpretations of the characters flipped.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, again, it's like, is there is there something that is a little bit more convincing that pulls you to that side of the theory, and so therefore you have to reevaluate all your other evidence? And it's not even that I don't like, because to be completely honest, all of the stuff with Midnight Motorist and 87, um, FLAF is one thing, the 187 BPM and the stuff kind of like in the later games, like the Steel Wool games, those I do find compelling, but I don't find them more compelling than the other things that I'm currently talking about. So it's not that I'm saying, oh, that has no evidence. That's a bunch of nonsense. It's just that I'm like, yeah, that makes sense, but I think it makes more sense if you compile all these things over here. Same with Charlie 87. I go, yeah, that makes sense, that makes sense, that makes sense, but it doesn't make sense with this, like with Henry's line, the thing that, bled out into all of this. Why would he say that if she was the last to die? Oh, he got hurt some other way. weird that he's talking all about the victims and about the families
Mhm.
that were damaged by the deaths of their kids. And then he's like, yeah, but when my restaurant was shut down, that was really the first wound. It would feel a little off in terms of what the story is trying to communicate.
Yeah.
Um,
So my,
yeah,
very similar to that. It's a great example where whenever someone says Charlie 87, I'm just like, no, no amount of 87 evidence, no amount of grave order stuff is more compelling to me than a wound first inflicted on me. I really think that that would need an insane amount of evidence to overwrite one of the very few
yeah.
lines of dialogue in the franchise from Henry as the series is ending,
Mhm,
With that
mhm.
said, I'm also like, oh yeah, William probably killed David Murray, but the
Right.
but no one knew that. Henry didn't know that, so it still allows him to say that
So it's
Charlie
still
was a wound
fine.
first
Yeah.
inflicted on me, so like it still fits. It is a retcon, but it's a seamless retcon because he didn't know. From a certain point of view,
Yeah.
it still works. But someone else might say, well, from a writing perspective, that means that Scott was lying to us in FNAF 6 if David was planned. I'd be like, well, what's your definition of a retcon? What do you think Scott would or wouldn't do? And then it just devolves
Yes.
into, we're just guessing what kind of narrative it is, how closely Scott, you know, follows those things. Um,
Yeah.
I was gonna say, oh, okay. So on this topic, I think that one of the weakest pieces of evidence that anybody uses in any theory is later that night. I
Sure.
just I just think that it is a name that only comes from exploring the files. I think
Sure.
that the only other time anything has ever been in the files is Mangle's sprite name in FNAF 2 that's called like He's Here or something.
Hmm.
Scott would later get upset that people looked in the files because his name was Glitchtrap in the files and Scott didn't want that to be his real name. The whole Cassidy Princess thing from Security Breach. Scott, he knows that we look, but it's like he doesn't think, in the future from that point, he wasn't thinking that people would to the extent that they use it for lore. And I just think that it was unprecedented at the time. It's been,
Hmm.
you know, not countered, but it's been, Scott's commented on it happening since then. And I just think that
Yeah.
there's a reasonable explanation. It's just that that's what Scott labeled his code. Midnight Motorist, and then later that night is what happens after Midnight Motorist, and that's what he named these files for himself.
I I I agree and disagree. I agree that it's not like the smoking gun that I think people treat it as. Later that night. Oh my God, it's later after the night that Charlie died. Well, is it later the night of the MCI? Is it later the night that Crying Child died? Is it later the night? You can have any night be later that night. Um, Again, I think the in the same way that I'm like 5 laps is not really good evidence, but you don't need it. Later that night, I don't think is necessarily good evidence, but you don't need it. And I would argue that I think there is a slight difference between Security Breach and FNAF 6 in that Scott made FNAF 6 entirely on his own, aside from obviously Leon Riskin and the voice actors, and Lady Fizzy doing the art. But like, or is it Lady Fizzy or I can't remember which one of the artists that did the art. Um, in terms of the coding and the programming and all that, he did all that himself, and so he was very much in control of what could and could not be seen. I think something like Security Breach and him talking about how frustrating it is that people took Glitch Trap is he wasn't on the ground floor coding every character and naming every asset in the files of the Steel Wool games. So it would be frustrating if he didn't have that kind of control there. Uh, so I don't necessarily think he couldn't have left something in the files on purpose in FNAF 6. But that being said, I agree that it is even if you think that it's usable, I don't think it's necessarily compelling because later that night means literally nothing, especially given that, like you said, the minigame itself is named Midnight Motorist. So
Yep.
it could be later that night, meaning the minigame you're playing. Um, I mean, it could be an interesting idea if like I don't know, like is the concept that we're actually seeing because I know you go out of the little hole in Midnight Motorist and you end up here, but like later that night, does that imply that when we're playing Midnight Motorist, he's actually going somewhere else and then we do a time jump and we missed what happened in between? Is that what's going on? Later than midnight, so we're skipping whatever happened after midnight and then we're coming back into the story. I don't know about that, but there's so many ways you can take it that it's not particularly compelling to me either.
Yeah. I would say similarly, the rain being the same graphic between mini games, people will use as a smoking gun that it's the same night. Whereas I'm just like, well, it's a video game and you're reusing an asset. I don't know if that's, I don't find that compelling.
Yeah, again, it's the culmination of multiple pieces of evidence. Like if it was just, oh, it's raining. It's raining. Okay. Oh, is it after Follow Me? Are we seeing what happened in between every time he took apart a robot? And this is on one of those nights. Um, but it's the raining in combination with the car, in combination with the he's drunk, he's coming from somewhere. Um, all of that tying together, I think there's a few that you line up one after the other. It's not that it's just one piece of evidence in isolation that I find compelling. But again, like I said, I could be swayed to your side of the argument if someone had a better explanation that I found
Yeah.
more compelling.
My thought with things like this, and it applies to a lot of different theories, is, if I were to make a Midnight Motorist theory that is not the night that Charlie died and, William's not Orange Guy, etc., I definitely have to explain the purple car, 100%. But I feel
Yeah.
like if I didn't even mention the rain sprite, there would be comments where people go, actually, here's a counter to your point. It's the same rain. And I'd be like, well, like, I don't feel like I need to address the same asset being used in the same video game. Or if someone said, the
Yeah.
file's called Later That Night, I'd be like, I feel like I don't need to address the name of his note to himself in the code. Like, I just feel
Well,
like,
here's a
people know
here's
those
a here's a
things,
good
but I don't find
yeah.
them
Well,
important. Yeah.
here's a good counter, right? Is like, okay, so the rain is the same. Is it important that green guy and yellow guy are literally exact mirror images of each other, just with the hue shifted? Like, are they supposed to be identical people that are, they just have a slightly different color scheme, like, or the cars, they're all identical cars except for those wheel covers. So they're actually all the same make of car, and they're all from the same manufacturer. It's like, no, they're just it's simple, it's asset reuse, it's whatever. The fact that the rain is the same is not the important part to me. The important part to me is that like it's raining and we're in the same car and we're doing this and you're
Yeah, yeah,
lining
yeah.
up the different pieces together. I think the biggest thing for you to address beyond even I think the purple car is probably, you're right, the most important one, because that's why would Scott put you in that car? And I know it's probably more of like a thematic thing that you'd go into. My thing beyond that, from a more meta perspective, is what is the purpose of doing this in depth of a mini game, going through all this, and then also having Fruity Maze? Like, why do both? Just do one or the other. There's no need for Fruity Maze and this game, unless they're about two different events. Like, if you just
Mhm.
said, "Oh, this is about the DCI, and this is showing how William did the DCI," I'd be like, "Okay, that makes a little more sense." But then, is it really that important that, oh, in this case, it's the kid's abusive parent, and so that's why I just think we don't get a method of how he kills Charlie. She's just there and then she's dead. He lures Susie with the dog, obviously, but then this game would be going into like 20 times as much detail about that whole method that he has. And that's honestly like my biggest kind of thing that makes me think it's about William or about the Aftons, is because of how much detail there is in the game that otherwise is sort of misspent. Like, this level of detail should be going into the Charlie minigame rather than some kid in the MCI or the DCI that we
Mhm.
don't even get to know which one it is.
Yeah, I mean, I have an answer for that. Maybe I can tell you a lot of my evidence off stream just because I'm saving it.
Yeah, sure, of course
Um,
you're gonna. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but yes, I do see that. Um, one of the things that I kind of find frustrating about the things that when there's a popular theory that a lot of people adopt, there's always the fact that certain things lining up they find compelling. For example, the all three minigames have a car, the speeding away skid marks, etc.
Yeah.
But if someone came out with a very compelling theory and was like, guys, this is the same game where Candy Cadet tells us that six bodies were stitched together and then buried, and then in another minigame in the same game, we find a giant grave in the woods. Like, why wouldn't you connect
Hmm.
this to the Candy Cadet story? Like, come on, it's so obvious. I'd be like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like that is a connection in the same game of two things we don't
Yeah.
understand. We don't know where those six bodies were, five bodies, whatever, were buried, and we don't know what this giant mound is. So, maybe they are related. And so
Hmm.
I think choosing, which one is more related, the skid marks in the same car, or the we have something that was big and buried, and then we have something that's big and underground, but we don't know what it is. I don't think I've ever heard a theory that the mound is whatever Candy Cadet story is, but I think that's because no one knows what Candy Cadet story means. But
I think I've heard an idea about that, like in relation to the toy Killbot theory, because at the end of that game there's a knock at the door, which is
hmm,
obviously William knocking at the door to Michael's room. I don't think it perfectly lines up myself, but I have heard something around that idea. My argument against something along those lines would be, okay, we've got uh we've got mini games, right? They're like one section of the Lore Keeper ending. Is there's these three mini games that are presented in not necessarily the same style because they're all unique in terms of their execution, but like they are a mini game with a secret part that you have to find that gives you a story. And the Candy Cadet to get stories are very clearly being told as metaphorically. So I would agree that if someone gave me a metaphorical explanation for something being buried in the woods being the sewn to, like I could say, oh yeah, well what Michael is being led to, what's buried in the mound is not literally five bodies being sewn together, but it's what William did with the experiments on Crying Child to try and put him back together. And maybe that was like injecting all of the remnant from whatever into Fredbear or something. I think that would line up with the timeline that I currently ascribe to, but just say that was the argument. That would be more in line than saying, oh, well, this story literally says that there's this, and therefore, we can just ascribe that to anything because it's the style of information being delivered is clearly metaphorical, whereas in the mini games it's more literal. It's not
yeah,
100% literal, but it's more literal.
yeah, a connection between the
It's just
mini
dialogue.
games and a connection between a mini game and a Candy Cadet are different by virtue of what is telling the story. I get that. I would agree
Yes.
actually. Rose sends $5. I just got out of work. Y'all want me to decompile a copy of FNAF 6 and look at Midnight Motorist's hitbox/playable path? Um, I think we have confirmed via multiple playtesters that you can just walk anywhere. In the lighter colored section. So I'll have a talk with Fazent later, or maybe I misunderstood what he said, but I don't think I did. So I do not think that would be necessary, Rose.
Wouldn't be necessary, but if you wanna,
Yeah. If you want to maybe discover
for
something
your
really
own
cool,
enjoyment, do it. But
someone mentioned earlier. I'll
yeah,
say this real quick. They said that the sprite for the couch person is man sitting. That is not true, but that is something people have been repeating
hmm
for years. That was like someone renamed the file when they uploaded it to Reddit or something. It is just called person
yeah, I
two
think
or person
it's
one.
called like background 47 or something like that
Yeah.
because all of them, all of the different sprites are named the same thing and then a number. Um, and I believe that's just one of the elements.
Yeah. All right.
Charlie
So
87 would work with MCI 87. Would it? Would it?
well, MCI follow or MCI save them, which like you and I have spent dozens of hours trying to
Mhm.
put a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, but I still think Charlie would have to die before them, so I'd say she'd be like Charlie 85 or something.
Well, I can't. It can be the week, the week before. But yeah. Um,
Yeah, I mean, the reason I would say is because the previous location has rumors that cause them to put a bunch of security systems in that detect predators, so it would have to be something that happened at the last place.
well,
Could have been
hold on.
in
You see,
87, I guess.
no, no, you see, when he says rumors, they literally were just rumors. There's a little girl
They
with
were just made up. It was like
pigtails.
FNAF 4.
Yeah, little girl with pigtails in
Yeah.
FNAF 4. Playground rumor, kid just made it up. People started believing it because they're stupid. And then because of the field, it became real. So, like,
Yeah.
you can hand wave, you can hand wave most of that stuff away. I don't
Yeah.
think that's compelling, but, it's there if someone wanted to force the theory.
Yes.
All right, so how, if you were talking to, um, a it's 1987 because of the dice. The mound is Susie's dog. Junior's is Freddy's 2 person. Would you just be like, agree to disagree because we're just seeing the same evidence differently? Or would you have like here is my reason? Debate me. If you can defeat these
Okay.
points, I'll change my mind. Or you just like, it's a complex Jenga tower. I'm just where I am.
I would probably say that, but if I were put in the position to debate it, my my first one would be the juniors thing. If this is supposedly when the building is on lockdown, why are there what one, two, three, four, five, like yeah, five cars outside the building? Oh, it's because it's the five kids' parents have shown up. Um, is it like I don't know? I'd need a better explanation on what the timeline of events is of the save them stuff when William left the building, how he's being kicked out, not allowed back in, but also not being in under investigation when he lives like 2 seconds down the road. Um, that would be my why is it being referred to as juniors? I understand that like oh it's because it's a youthful building or it's for kids or it's trying to present a different image, but like why is that how it's being chosen to like why did Scott choose that depiction? Like why did he go, I know, I'll name it a thing that it's never been named before? And why haven't we since seen more sort of concrete evidence? If someone is using the 87 dice, I'd say, well then why in Five Laps does it look like a rundown diner that's just like, come on in, we're open, which is written on the front door if it's supposed to be a Freddy's location at midnight because they're definitely not open. Like
Yeah.
I that would be my first kind of point of contention with the idea. Um and then from there I'd be like, okay, uh what's the deal? Like what is the argument of Charlie 87? Like what is the mound then in that case?
Well, you see, it's still Susie's dog from 2 years ago, or MCI 87, so it's still Susie's dog.
MCI 87 Susie's dog I could get behind. But then I suppose, and this is in support of, I guess it's in support of neither of our arguments. It's like a third thing would be we're then just only connecting two of the mini games and not the third one. But I guess if it's Charlie 87 and MCI 87 at the same time, then it's that makes sense. I guess that it's Susie's dog. Um, yeah, that one I because I don't even have like a solid enough explanation for the man that I'd be able to dismantle it. So I'd say okay, question mark. Maybe it's Elizabeth's grave because she'd probably be dead at this point, or she would definitely be dead at this point. Um, so she died under mysterious circumstances, so it makes more sense for him to bury her in an unmarked grave in the middle of the woods rather than, Crying Child who died very publicly. But also who's checking up on William Afton's kid and where he's buried.
Yeah.
Um, and then all the rest of it is like, in terms of Michael running away, people have argued like, oh, if it's MCI 87 or if it's Midnight Motorist 87, then Michael is being led away to FNAF 2 to play as Fritz
Mhm.
because it's after the lockdown thing and he goes and he becomes Fritz and I'm like, but he got fired, so how did he get led away to join a company. It's not that, oh, we play as an unnamed character on night 6 and we never find out who it is. And so then you can argue, oh, maybe it's Michael. It's like, no, the company hired this person and fired them after their first shift. So it couldn't have just been he was led there randomly one night and then somehow got, picked up the picked up the pink slip. Um that would be my kind of debunk against that idea. But again, if someone says, no, he's just being led to the mound, I'd go, okay, I agree on that particular aspect.
It could be, Michael's like, "Where are you, crying child's ghost?" And he leads him to Freddy's 2, and he goes, oh, "You're at Freddy's 2." And then, the next morning he goes in and applies for a job under the name Fritz. It's like the ghost is just showing him where the body is. It doesn't need to literally be that Midnight Motorist is night 7 of FNAF 2 or whatever.
I mean, maybe. I
I'm just playing devil's advocate. Like, I don't believe that.
Yeah. I know. I'm just like, I'm trying to think through it in my head. I'm like, I guess that could be true. Uh, I think it's funny, the idea of him getting to the FNAF 2 building and being like, whoa, that's crazy. And look, Jeremy's in there. Anyway, I'll come back to borrow. And why does Jeremy have 6 cars parked outside? That's crazy.
All right. Chat comments, if you guys have any more questions for myself or Unwithered, now would be the time to ask. Because
Juan's potatoes, bros playing GiBi's advocate.
Horror. GiBi fell from the very, tall moon, heaven, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have much more to ask. I feel like that was pretty, succinct, detailed explanation as well as some countering. Yeah, I mean, I do have one more thing, and it's not supposed to be a gotcha. I just literally forgot. Okay. One of my strongest pieces of evidence for it's not William is the Toy Chica line where she's like, she's getting the boys, and one of them is clearly Susie's dog, but it's told slightly differently. Because, like, in Fruity Maze, William does not go. William doesn't tell Susie that the dog's dead. The dog is dead, and Susie, yes, implies to William. In Toy Chica, Chica tells the person that their dog's dead. So already these are not literal, or the details can be a little fuzzy. So what's your take on the, I'm going to go to his house and find a window?
So there's a couple of things. I think the most the most simple one is what she says is, if he doesn't show up, I'll just go to his house. If he doesn't open the door, I'll just find a window. Chimney's always an option, or I could set the house on fire. And what happens in Midnight Motorist is he goes to his house, he doesn't open the door, and he goes to find a window. And when he goes and he finds the window's already broken and Michael's not there. So the argument would be, it's not her talking about what happened to Michael, it's talking about what happens when William goes there and because that's what he tries to do, is he goes, oh, he can't hide from me. And then he goes outside and he finds a window and the window's broken. So it would just be, you interpret it as he's the killer coming to break in. Yes. I'm reading it as he gets to the house and the events play out, beat for beat. Because either way, neither of them, if they're the killer or the person finding the window, neither of them use the chimney, neither of them set the house on fire. Neither version of that happens. Yeah, so I think it's kind of a moot thing.
My counter to that is that in the Chica story, it was, I'll tell him that someone ran over his dog, and then I'll entice him in with warm cookies. And it's like, that's just also not, there's no cookies in Fruity Maze, so there can be no chimney in Midnight Motorist.
Sure.
Yep.
I guess it would just be, I mean, I think that the better counter argument, like in general terms, about these minigames is they always result in a death. So unless I'm saying that, oh, and then William kills Michael when he gets home, then that would be an easy counter. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's the question is like, is the finding a window thing? I think the more important part is the setting the house on fire and wait for him to run out, and then he can run into my arms. The I'll just find a window comes after if he doesn't open the door, and also being invited to a location to come over later. And if he doesn't show up, then I'll go to his house. So it's like the window part is just one of the things in there. It wasn't, I told him to stay home, so I'm gonna go up and I'm gonna surprise him at his window, and then I'll bring him with me, and he'll run into my arms or whatever. It's that's like one option in a list of things if he doesn't open the door, whereas presumably in Midnight Motorist the window is the first option because we just see there's a pair of footprints outside and the runaway. Do you, do you think the runaway broke the window or the footprints broke the window?
Runaway. I think they broke out.
And what about the footprint? Like, why do the footprints just sit there and not move away?
For limitations of the 8-bit minigame, could Scott have put a third footprint kind of right behind them in the bushes to show that the person walked, for like he came from somewhere and stood there and waved, and the kid broke through the window to come get him, and then he walked away with him? Yes, but him choosing not to do that, I don't think is evidence that it didn't happen. Like some people will say, it
that's
has to
fair.
be Golden Freddy because there's no other footprint, so he must have teleported. And I'm like, or Scott
Yeah.
just didn't choose to, display the rest of the footprints.
Yeah, like I could argue that like, oh, if you're showing that the footprints led the kid away into the woods, you would want to show the two pairs of footprints going alongside each other away,
Mm-hmm.
but I also can't necessarily argue what Scott would or wouldn't do to indicate that. I think it would be an odd choice if that's what he was trying to show and chose not to indicate the two of them walking together. Um, but again, that's that's trying to interpret exactly what Scott
Yep.
is or is not doing. Which again is all the meta arguments that we've been making. Like, I think Scott wouldn't have done this, or I don't think he would maybe not do that. And those arguments are purely just everyone's opinion on how to write a story, how to make a story isn't necessarily the correct outcome. Same with the glass on the ground. Oh, was the window broken in or broken out?
So Tarian, $2, just says the word question. And then Guralager says, spring body jumping down the chimney like Santa Claus. Oh, and that's so true, because in the Silver Eyes, William is compared to Santa Claus, so really that just confirms it. Thank you. All right, if we got nothing else, we can call it here. I think this has been very enlightening, and my thing with Midnight Motorist is like everyone has a different answer, so you can almost have this conversation
Yeah.
with literally everyone. I think that Fazent's video
Yeah.
is probably going to cover, all the different solutions. So definitely be on the lookout for that. Emmy just donated saying, maybe Toy Chica isn't William Afton. Maybe it's the vengeful kid farming the DCI.
We talked about this recently because I thought I was looking at William plush and that idea, and it just clicked in my head that I went, hang on a minute, we go, oh, Toy Chica is William Afton, and then we go, oh, it says tomorrow is another day, therefore William said tomorrow is another day, when really what you can or maybe would make more sense to do is to go, this Toy Chica character is killing a lot of people. I wonder who that is. And then at the end they go, tomorrow is another day. And you go, oh, Toy Chica is the Fredbear plush. Oh, who's that character? How does that tie into everything? And then you go backward. We assume because of the meme and like it has just wormed its way into our collective consciousness that Toy Chica is William Afton, and that's like 100% confirmed. That's not confirmed. That's a reasonable way to look at the evidence, and it gets confusing as to what the Fredbear plush would be doing by collecting a bunch of people. But maybe it's like, oh, I want to put you back together. I'm going to kill all these kids, and that's or I'm going to kill all these people. and that's the idea. And if the Fredbear plush is Fredbear, then maybe it is a random kid, or maybe it is the crying child or Michael or something, and they're leading them away because it's part of their plan, and that's what Toy Chico was trying to tell us, and that's why it mentions the window thing.
Yeah, it's
There's a lot of ways to look at it.
it is actually circular logic in that it makes sense, but there's no beginning. If Dawko believed that the plush was William, then when Toy Chica says tomorrow's another day, he goes, "Oh, Toy Chica's William." And then other people hear Toy Chica's William, and they're like, "Oh, well, Toy Chica says tomorrow's another day, therefore the plush is William."
Yes.
There's no starting point of that circle beyond the assumption that either Toy Chica is William for a different reason or the plush is William for a different reason.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to say, like, as I have considered it, I think in terms of the story that UCN is doing, and it's going back and forth between Toy Chica and Bear of Vengeance, I think it makes sense if we're telling the story of the guy in UCN who did all this horrible stuff, and we're representing it in this, admittedly weird way, but then we're also going across and we're seeing the story of who I think is the vengeful spirit. We're seeing crying child story and all that kind of stuff, and that we're going back and forth, and then we end up in the void with Golden Freddy. But maybe they're both Golden Freddy, and so that's why the final cutscene is Golden Freddy, is they're both there. It's the Fredbear plush and crying child, and it's both their stories, and it's all about Golden Freddy. None of it's about William, and that's what we're doing. But I think the character going around sadistically killing a bunch of people and collecting their parts feels more William-esque than Fredbear plush, who we don't really know anything about.
I mean, people in chat are even saying like, "Oh, well, in the narrative of Toy Chica, it's her classmates, so maybe it would be kids killing kids." Or, it seems more similar to Kelsey, who is Golden Freddy.
Yeah, I was going to say Kelsey,
William. Yeah.
I mean,
and they're also saying in here, Toy Chica in the movie is ultimately the puppet, which is the vengeful spirit of the movie continuity.
I mean, it's interesting if the first victim is represented by the foxy hook, right?
Yes.
It's interesting if the idea is the Fredbear plush is is not like a benevolent or misunderstood character, but is like an actively malicious character. That the first victim of the Fredbear plush is the crying child, right? Like, it did something to influence the events, to make him scared, to put him in that position, and it leads to his death. And now they're looking for somebody else, right? Like,
well, the Fredbear plush is David Murray, so yeah.
Exactly. I met such a wonderful guy, but I don't think it was to last, or I don't think it was meant to last. For my heart belongs to another, and then they just go about and they just kill kid after kid after kid after kid. I mean, maybe it's interesting why that would be the case, and why they would be the kid on the hill, why they would be collecting parts. I don't know. But why does Kelsey do it? Why does Kelsey kill those kids?
Great question. I mean, technically it's justice, which could kind of fit into Bear of Vengeance. And it's also a bear, like...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot there if you throw away... That's why I love throwing away assumptions and doing the... what's my series called? It's like, how theorists come up with nonsense. You could be like, oh, well, I dreamt Jolly Roger, so that's like a theory. Or it could just be like, let's throw things away. What if Toy Chica is Kelsey? What does this say? So that might be something a string that we pull on another date.
Yeah.
All right. I gotta go do stuff. Thank you for being here, my guest. Everyone, there's going to be a link to Wizard's channel. Obviously, he makes the greatest FNAF fan fiction of all time. Go and watch that. I am in them.
Thank you very much.
And hopefully you guys stick around and subscribe. I'm going to have my Midnight Motorist video in the near future. I'm working on a couple others. And then on my other channel, every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern, I'm doing my book videos. That's on Spooky Shack. There's also a link to that in the description. So goodbye, everyone. Actually, there's not a link. I need to add a link to that. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for being here. Remember that Freddy's stands for friendly engagement, discussion, and discourse yield success. I forgot respectful. It's fine. Bye,
I was gonna
everyone.
say, Feddies.
Freddy's.
Bye, everybody. Remember Feddies.